Welcome to Fresh Catholic, a podcast for those who are converting, reverting, or simply want a fresh perspective of the Catholic faith to help them to open their hearts and minds to become closer to the love and goodness of Christ. My daily prayer is that I will be a bright light to others, to be filled with the love and light of Christ, so that when people look at me, they see Him radiating out from me for His glory. Hello and welcome. I'm Lori Balderas, and I'm so happy you're here. Well, thank you for tuning in today. Even though it's summer, it doesn't mean you can't give your time, focus, and attention to the Lord. Why not take this time to catch up on or re-listen to Fresh Catholic episodes? Also, make a summertime habit of listening to Fresh Catholic Daily, the daily readings. What a great way to start your day, especially if you aren't able to attend daily Mass. Fresh Catholic can go with you anywhere you are. It can go to the beach, lake, even on a road trip, or in your backyard. Thanks so much to all of you who are supporting the weekly podcast and Fresh Catholic Daily, the daily readings, by listening, subscribing, rating with 5 stars, and reviewing. It really helps everything if you guys could do that. You don't know how much I would appreciate it. It's a simple thing to you maybe, but it's a big thing for me. And I would just love to have more followers on Instagram and Facebook at Fresh Catholic. I do little videos every day, so please follow me and watch those and share with your friends. Also, please check out our website, freshcatholic.com, to see what we have there. We have Fresh Catholic comics that Simon did himself, our blog, the podcast is there if you don't have any of the other platforms. Our exclusive faith-based online store is there with exclusive Fresh Catholic merch that, again, Simon designed himself. What a multifaceted guy I married. And there's Fresh Catholic coffee, 17 flavors, roasted and shipped on the same day. Maybe you could have iced coffee this summer. Any purchase will help support the Fresh Catholic ministry. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I have a very special return guest today, Educator Charles Merritt. But before we get to that, I have to tell you, we had some technical difficulties during this episode. It happens to the best of us. I'm sure Bishop Barron has that happen every now and again. You never know. Anyway, because Simon is so good at what he does, he did his best to salvage what we could. So don't be afraid. Listen to it anyway. It's a great episode, and I just wanted to let you know up front. That's showbiz, baby. Anyway, let me give you a reminder about who Charles Merritt is and what he does before I welcome him to our very temperamental mic. Charles Merritt heads up the Adult Education Faith Formation Ministry at Our Lady of the Assumption Church in Ventura, California. The ministry has a theology track where he teaches the Catholic faith, a Bible study track where he conducts Bible studies. He has a weekly podcast to discuss the Sunday gospel readings. He has a weekly email to help educate and encourage life application lessons of scripture passages, events, and people. He guest lectures, substitute teaches at a Catholic high school, and takes the Eucharist to 40 residents at a local nursing home. And now, as if he already isn't busy enough beyond words, he's on our website, freshcatholic.com, or our YouTube channel with Fresh Catholic courses. In the first series, Pivotal Prayers, Charles explores and teaches about 2 foundational Catholic prayers, the Hail Mary and the Our Father. He explains and teaches why we pray these prayers and what they mean. We are also in production and have been filming the next series on sin, dun dun dun, with him. Go check out the trailer for that. Very soon we will be offering a downloadable book that expands on his lessons. It will have biblical references and more. So exciting. So without further ado, please welcome Charles Merritt. Welcome, Charles.
Well, thank you, Lori. It's great to be back to chat with you.
I'll tell you one reason I'm happy to have you here, besides the fact that you're my friend, and I like having you here. This episode lights a little fire under me, and I have a hot Italian temper. And so I brought you here to be the voice of reason and to reel me in. So this episode, I really wanted to talk about men. All right. So I have said already that I consider June kind of man month, Father's Day month, priesthood month, things like that. And I personally really love and value men. I was very, very close with my dad, especially. I put a lot of value in him, and so did a lot of people. He was a very amazing man and a manly man, but he also was what I would call a Renaissance man. He had a lot of factors to him. And I have sons, and I have grandsons, and I have a brother, and I have nephews, and I'm close with all of them. And my son-in-law, I really, really value him. So I just really value men as a whole. And I feel like men are getting a bad rap. And this isn't a news story. This isn't something like just suddenly is happening. I feel like progressively men have been getting a harder and harder rap. And I think I'm noticing it even more than I have before, because I happen to be listening to a lot of different podcasts now. I listen to different, all different podcasts, men and women, younger, older. I just have a variety. I'm not really stuck in one genre or one type of thing. But I'm noticing the hot topics lately are toxic masculinity and the patriarchy, that women are against the patriarchy. These are just words I'm hearing incessantly. And then just even more recently, there's the whole Harrison Butker controversy, which, if for those of you who don't know, Simon and I already touched on it, and Charles and I are actually not going to dive into Harrison Butker today, but just to reference that is that Harrison Butker is a kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's a Super Bowl winner, and he's a devout Catholic, and he's a father and a husband. And he did a speech at a Catholic university that he was invited to a group of Catholics, and was talking about the value of women being mothers and wives. And boy, he got some backlash over that. Yeah, he did. And so that just even launched me even more. And so, like I said, it gets me very wound up, and I don't want to be wound up about it. I want to talk logically and sensibly and biblically about this with you. I would like to just pick your brain a little bit. And I think men in our world have such value. Both men and women do. God created us to complement each other, balance each other out. God created us for different reasons. We both have very different and important roles. So let's first start off. Let's start at the beginning and talk about how and why God created us the way he did, men and women, and why that's so important.
Well, we go back all the way to creation, all the way to the creation story, Genesis, where we read, male and female, he created them. And most people think, okay, that just applies to gender, and it does apply to gender, but it also applies to body types and also the structure of the brains, because neurobiologists will tell you that a man's brain and a woman's brain are structured differently for good reason. So when he created male and female, he created them, different, equal in dignity, of course, but different so as to complement each other. And each has their own strengths. So it's male and female, differences equal in dignity, but different, and the differences are complementary, and they're complementary for good reasons, because after all, God is God, and he knows what he's doing. And so we go back to his original design and creation, in creating male and female in a complementary yet equal in dignity fashion.
And like you said, God doesn't make mistakes. It was very well thought out.
No, he doesn't. And, if we go back to the creation story, we know it well. God created everything out of nothing. And if you look at the actual passages, every time he creates something, he calls it good.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he creates mankind, man and woman, the verbiage changes a little bit. It's no longer good, it's very good. So as to indicate that there's something about man, and again, mankind, that puts it above creation and separates it from the rest of his creation. And in theology, we say that man is the pinnacle of God's creation, in that he's made in God's image and likeness. And what that means is, just as God has a divine intellect and a divine will, man has a human intellect and a human will. So we have, in a very a very finite degree, what he has in an infinite degree. He has an intellect and free will. We have an intellect and free will, and that's how we image God.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that man being the pinnacle of God's creation, speaking specifically of the male part of that, that means masculinity, is created very good. Inherently, there's nothing wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
Man was created very good, and masculinity was created very good.
Right. And same femininity.
Yes.
God obviously made our bodies complementary so we could procreate,
Yes,
which to me that in itself is such a beautiful miracle. We need each other for that.
Right.
And that was, that's incredibly important.
Yeah, you reference creation again. What was the command? Be fruitful and multiply.
Right. And also, in the beginning, he made sure that Adam had a partner, because we're not meant to be alone. Adam was alone. He had all the animals. He had everything he needed, but he needed a partner.
Right.
And so God created the partner.
Right.
Okay. So that also, in this day and age, women today don't think they need men. Theoretically, they can just go have a baby, a lab baby, and not have the man with them. Right. But that's not how God planned it.
No, the fact, again, going reference to scripture, because I'm a scripture geek, it is not good for man to be alone. So obviously, the fact that God gave Adam a partner tells us right off the bat that that's part of his will.
Exactly. The fact it goes all the way back to the beginning. Yeah. This isn't something new. No. God didn't try all different genders and different sexes. There's two.
Right.
There's
two and only two.
There's two and only two. Right. Or contrary to what a lot of people are saying or thinking or believing or whatever.
Maybe a topic for another podcast.
But it is important to note that God did definitely make us different. Yeah. But again, I like what you said, but equal in dignity.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that I really value about men and women is I do love their differences. I love the fact that, and again, these are generalities. I feel like Simon and I talked about in another episode just, recently, where back in the olden days, there were definitely the man's role and the woman's role. Okay. And that was very stereotypical. And I personally don't have a big problem with the stereotypical roles of men and women. But I can also see moving forward and morphing forward that it's okay to blur the lines on some of those specific roles in your household. Simon and I talked about, like, let's say the dad is the one that stays home with the children and the mother needs to go to work, depending on their jobs. Right. Okay. I don't see a problem with that. Mm-hmm. I don't see a problem if dad is more artistic and soft, like Simon, and mom is a little more, feisty and organized.
Because you still got the complementary.
Right.
Yeah.
We're still balanced out, and it's whatever works in your own home. Right. So I don't feel like you have to be set in these. To be a man, you have to do this, and to be a woman, you have to do this. It's not about that. It's more about working as a team. Right. What's going to thrive in your personal relationship and what's going to thrive for your children and family. Exactly. And this is why, even when I was raising my children, and I've brought this up in another episode, my boys, I have 2 boys and a girl. My boys, one's a musician and one's an artist. And my daughter was the athlete. Okay. So we never said to the boys, you must play sports. Right. If they wanted to, we would have we would have celebrated that and encouraged it.
Sure.
But that's not what they wanted to do. So we celebrated and encouraged their musical and artistic side of them. And our daughter, who was a very feminine girl, was playing sports. So what? So I think, again, if we just go ahead and say, that's fine. It doesn't mean my daughter wanted to be a boy and my boys wanted to be a girl because they chose those other stereotypical maybe girl and boy things. We encouraged them to be what they were interested in.
Sure.
Okay. So that's the part I guess I struggle with, is when women think they're devalued or that they can't be feminine without being perceived as weak. I think there's nurturing men and women. I think stereotypically the women are the nurturers and the men are the tough ones. But I think it's okay to blur those lines a bit as long as you're being complimentary.
As long as you need each other and you're being complimentary.
But I'm wondering where this anger towards men came from. Now, I have to preface something. I also realize that a lot of women have been treated very badly by men. And I'm not saying that not all men are great, but not all women are great either. So I think I guess when I look at people who are having problems or who are struggling or who abuse certain situations, I don't look at their gender as to why they're having a hard time. It's the person. Yeah. It's kind of like I don't look at people's skin color, and I say, well, you're a bad person because you're this color, and you're a bad person because you're that color, or whatever. I just don't think in those terms, but I know some people do. I know people think of as far as race, as far as, all these things that they want to be mad at groups of people about, or certain people for things that to me don't have anything to do with anything. So I'm just trying to figure out, even though I know that men have wronged women, I think women have wronged men as well. I think there's a lot of blame being thrown about.
Yeah, seemingly, yeah, and it seems to be gaining steam in terms of the number of people that are, for lack of a better term, buying into it. I mean, just the phrase toxic masculinity, and you were hitting on this a second ago. There are some behaviors that, and simply we'll just talk about the men here, that men can engage in that are toxic and that are unhealthy, not only for the ones that are receiving the behaviors, but for themselves. So men, masculinity can engage in toxic behaviors. But then when you look at the term toxic masculinity, it's almost as if they're talking about, they're not restricting it to just certain behaviors, that masculinity overall in and of itself is toxic. That's the direction I see it going. And I think that's an important distinction to make between men that sometimes engage in toxic or unhealthy behavior versus saying all men, masculinity in general is toxic.
Right. Right.
So when you see the word toxic masculinity, it's almost as if grammatically you're taking the toxic part of it and you're applying it to all masculinity and saying masculinity in and of itself is toxic.
Right.
And that goes back to what we said at the beginning, creation, where man is the pinnacle of creation. Masculinity is good. There's nothing inherently toxic about it.
Right.
Right. Certainly with and again, talking just from the male perspective, we all have fallen human natures, right? So unfortunately, males, men are going to engage in certain toxic, unhealthy behaviors sometimes. Okay, certain ones. That doesn't mean maleness or masculinity in and of itself is toxic.
Right.
And that's the direction I see it going, from being just specific in terms of behavior, certain behaviors, to all masculinity is inherently toxic.
Right.
Period. Yeah.
Or the patriarchy is bad.
Right.
Right. So, and I think that's interesting because obviously we know, when everything began, everything was perfect. And then Adam and Eve, there was the original sin, and then everything kind of went to hell in a handbasket at that point. But I mean, if you look back at history, and men were definitely in charge, and women had a place, a lower status, I would say. Yeah. And throughout history, that was kind of how it was, and that's gone on. Now, I think we do, if we're smart, and I hope we all are smart, we learn from our mistakes and we learn from history, and we go back and say, okay, we don't want to erase history, because history is supposed to teach us what not to do in the future. Exactly. We're supposed to learn from it and get wise from it. So just because something was being done hundreds, thousands of years ago doesn't mean it's okay today. But it also doesn't mean you have to go completely the pendulum swings to the complete other end. Yeah,
because whenever you're operating on the extremes, that's going to be problematic.
It is always problematic. I also don't like it when big groups of people get punished for one or two people, their bad behavior, or somebody's experience with bad behavior. In my past, I have been really badly treated by some men and boys. And to this day, I know that happened. I've forgiven them that happened, and I've moved past it. Now, that's my story. I know some women can't get past certain things, but I've been in therapy. I've talked it out. I now have the Lord that I pray to. I'm realizing that God's going to handle the situations that were done to me in the past. And I have to move past it. And I have to hope that those men and boys have gotten help, or that they've moved past it, or I can't just sit and wallow in it. And I'm not going to punish other men for that, for those things. Now, again, that's my story. But I really would encourage people to realize that if you're making a big statement about men and this patriarchy and this toxic masculinity, you're really throwing out a big toxic net yourself.
Oh, yeah. No question about it. Right. You're painting with hugely broad strokes.
Again, just because we're wronged by somebody, it doesn't have to just be men. If we're all wronged by somebody at some point, that's just human nature. And again, I just caution people on lumping large groups of people. And also, it has such a ripple effect. These big statements, this anger, this hostility. So let's say you're angry at men, just, you like to say, I hate men, I don't, right. But the term, I hate men, or, we don't need men. Well, if you have a son, what do you think your son is thinking when you're saying those things? What is he hearing and taking in the It would be the same way as if a man were talking poorly about a woman. That's not okay. Neither one of those is okay, because then your children are saying, well, gee, do you hate me too? Right. Or if men are talking, is this the right word, despairingly about a woman? Mm-hmm. Their daughters might think, well, gee, do you disvalue me too? Right. What does that mean for me? Yeah. My ex-husband was such a good dad to our daughter. He was, just really made her into a strong girl. I remember when she was a baby girl, and she's a beautiful, beautiful, physically beautiful girl since she's a baby. And my ex-husband would say, oh boy, we're in big trouble with this one, but he really wanted her to know that she was valued by him, and that she was a valuable girl that was going to be a valuable woman. And now she's a wife, a mother of 5 children. She owns a business. She's a stay-at-home mom, but she owns a business. I loved that he did that. And then, of course, with my boys, I wanted them to be good men. And so we have to be really cautious how we're talking around our children about the other sex.
Yeah. Because when you're talking in generalities and you're lumping, everybody together, that's the risk you run. Is for a son, I say, well, wait a second, if you hate all men, I'm a guy, so what does that mean for me?
Well, and then does it make him think that he doesn't want to be a boy because you hate boys and men? Yeah. So I guess I better be a girl because then you'll like me better.
Yeah, it's one of those Pandora's boxes where once you open it, you're kind of at you don't know what's going to come out.
No. So I do really feel like, again, from a biblical point of view, God made us all beautiful. We're beautiful works of art to our Creator. He created us, and we should be so thankful and grateful for what we are and who we are. But we also should quit looking inward at ourselves and look outward and find the good and beautiful in other people.
Right.
Like, what is their value? Everybody has a value.
Right. And a person's value, a person's dignity, that's not something that's conferred from the outside.
Right. And again, the talking about the complementing of the men and the women in the world. And we're meant to be together. We're meant to be partners. We're meant to procreate, have these children, and do what God intended and bring out the best in each other's being. What this is ending up doing, it's having a snowball effect. Because back in the day, people would pair off. They knew that that's what was the plan, because more people were going to church. More people were family oriented. There wasn't, your world wasn't as large.
Right.
You were a little more contained, which some people think is a bad thing. I don't. I think it was good they were kind of contained and they knew each other and they would pair off and there was security in that and safety in that. And yeah, I'm sure there were bad things going on. I'm not saying there weren't. I'm not living in Pollyanna land, but I do think for the most part, people were paired off and they knew their roles. And then it morphed into women's lib and all that, this went a little off the deep end, I feel. But what it's ending up doing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're a man. Okay. I feel, and I mean, I know I've heard this from Simon because he has friends who are single and they're afraid to date.
Yeah.
And so Simon will make comments to me, not this quote, I won't get his quote right, and he's really picky about that, but something to the effect of, I'm so glad I'm not dating and out in the dating world, because his friends that are dating, it's very tricky business out there. They don't know if they're supposed to be masculine, to court women. They're afraid they're going to offend them. They're afraid to even ask them out. They're afraid they're not going to be good enough, so why bother? I'm just going to stay in my house and I'm not going to date. Or they're dating for the wrong reasons. And that's snowballing into people aren't getting married. Yeah. Which then snowballs into people aren't having children. Right. And contrary to what everybody thinks, we don't have overpopulation. We have underpopulation. Right. And the reason everybody thinks we're overpopulated is because they keep saying, well, there's so many houses, there's so many that. You want to know why? Because everybody's broken up. Yeah. So everybody has to have 2 houses now. Yeah. It's not about overpopulation. We're actually having a problem right now. So again, we're not following God's plan. Right. Yeah, in many things we're not. No. But this part is becoming very serious and dangerous.
Oh, very much so, yes. Yeah. Because again, it branches out into a lot of other things.
Right.
You talked about the dating and then getting married and then having children. And yeah, it kind of, it has that snowball effect, a cumulative effect.
Right.
Where it compounds itself.
Right. Another thing I'm noticing that it's not really in full swing yet, but it is starting to happen. I can tell on these podcasts I listen to with these 30-something, single 30-something-year-olds. These are women, and they're out in the world, and they're trying to do this on their own, and they think they can without men. But what they're noticing is they're missing that part. They're missing the men, but they don't want to admit it because they're in that mob that won't allow them to, and they're wondering why men aren't asking them out.
Right, yeah.
It's like, well, you're very prickly, my dear. So that's why.
It's like, well, how am I supposed to behave? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to say? What does it even mean to be a man anymore?
Right.
Because they're so afraid of making missteps.
Right.
And offending, insulting, or whatever. So you've got men not approaching women, and you've got women saying the men aren't approaching me.
Right. It's funny because in theory, they like a masculine man. They want a man to sweep them off their feet, but then they want to do everything on their own. So do you have any idea of how this can work itself out? I'm trying to figure out, except for everybody just agreeing to, I don't even know what the answer is. Like, I keep wondering, because to me it's very logical and very simple. And I think it's gotten way, like most things today, have gotten way out of control. And it's almost like putting a genie back in a bottle. Right. Yeah. And I'm sad for people that want to get together, especially Catholic people. I'm noticing, like, well, because I'm a wedding coordinator. So it's interesting because, you know, at the Catholic Church, we have certain standards to get married. You don't just walk in and say, okay, well, we want to get married, so we're getting married next month. That's not how it works. Right. It's very serious. It's sacrament. You have to get prepped for it, which I think is all wonderful and great. Right. And you can't always have everything you want when you want it, contrary to our world today. Right. Yeah. But usually, typically, everything in the Catholic Church takes some time. Right. And that's because all the best things take time. Sure. And in order for them to be rich and meaningful and lasting, they need to take time to prepare for. Right. And to make sure that you know what you're doing and why.
You want a proper foundation. You want a strong foundation because you want to engage in something that lasts.
Right. Yeah. I know that Catholic people in particular, because we have a different set of standards and rules, if we're following the teachings of the church, I know that makes it even more tricky. But I just think this is going to sound so simplified and so silly maybe, but I just think if we just would get back to the basics of what God wanted.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there we go. Bye. That's the end of our
Easier said than done, right? But really, that's you were saying, well, what's ultimately the answer, and that's the answer. Get back to God's original will and design.
Right. And I think that's kind of how it is when I think about so many things that our world is going through. Yeah. It's because we are mucking it up. Right. We humans. God has this plan. And again, it's not a long list. No. It's a short list. It is. It's a hard list. Right. But it's a short list. Yes. Yeah. And it's not even vague.
No.
It's very clear. Yeah. And I think it's people just not wanting to listen to the Lord and listen to authority. I think the word authority is a toxic word to people. Yeah. Authority. Yeah. It's like, oh, authority, I don't want to listen immediately. I don't know what it is, but I don't want to listen.
I'm my own authority.
I'm my own authority. And see where it gets us? It gets us nowhere. And it's like really spiraling downward. Again, maybe this sounds simplified, but like, there's this one woman I listen to on a podcast. She loves to bash men. She loves to really, even though she's married, she loves her husband, okay? But she keeps him in his place. Like, he knows his place in their relationship, okay? So she runs the ship. But she also has such love and value for her dad and her grandfathers. So, and they're men. They're like masculine men. And she's always talking about, when she describes them, she doesn't say my dad and my grandfathers are manly men. It's just the way she talks about them. You can tell they're men. They're manly men. So I just find that funny. That again, it makes me think that they're all like in a mob mentality, these women, because I'm certainly not in that group. I do not put myself in that group. I, again, love and value men. I count on men. I need men in my life for certain things, and they need me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, I often think about this also in the church, in the Catholic Church. Men are the priests. Men are the deacons. I don't want female priests. That's not what was the plan. I don't want that at all. I'm not interested in that. It doesn't hurt me as a woman that there are male priests, because that's what God wanted. Yeah. And that's been the thing the whole entire time since Jesus. Right. Okay. So, but I know I'm valued at the church. Mm-hmm. I know there's many women at the church that have very high need and value at the church.
And you go back into salvation history, and it's replete with women,
Right.
That have played very, very significant and critical roles,
Right.
in advancing God's plan.
And Jesus himself was a lover of women.
No question. Yeah.
And a lover of men.
Yes.
He loved both.
Mm-hmm.
But men had a certain job and tasks to do. I don't even know if I want to use that terminology.
Right.
But the women that were following him, he very much valued them.
Oh, yeah.
The stories in the Bible about the women, he's being very kind and what's the word I want? I don't want to use the word nurturing. I want to use that
respectful.
Yes,
Yeah.
respectful and protective.
And that was very countercultural for the day.
Very.
Jesus put women on. He treated them with a lot more dignity and a lot more respect than the times that they were.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And like we said, back in history, things were different and all those things. But Jesus certainly didn't. You're right. Like even the woman at the well.
Yeah.
He gave her a lot of respect. He took time to talk to her. They said that would never happen. She even said, this would never happen. Like, why are you talking to me?
Right, yeah.
You're not supposed to be talking to me.
Yeah,
and he didn't follow the rules of other people. He had his rules, and his rules were the rules, So, and his father's rules. So I think that now women are so wrapped up in this frenzied mob mentality about men that I don't know if they feel like they feel good about it, because it's not working. I don't think it's working for anybody.
No, it's not working for the men. It's not working for the women.
No.
Yeah. And that shouldn't surprise us, because, again, we're going back really to the same thing, but that's not part of God's will and design.
Right.
So if you're operating counter to or outside of God's will and design, then one shouldn't be surprised that it's not working.
Right. Right. So I don't know if you remember this, but there was a book called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Oh, very popular book.
It was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
But
we're dating ourselves here.
I know. But I often found that book very interesting because, like, for example, let's say you're in a marriage. Okay, we'll call them Jack and Jill. And Jack and Jill are in a stereotypical male-female marriage. And the man has this masculinity and he's, doing all these men things. And then there's the woman. And the man can't understand why the woman's doing what she's doing, can't figure her out at all. And the woman can't figure out the man and thinks he's stupid and dumb and all these different things. And very, that to me seems like, I know that story. Okay. So in that book, they were trying to show actually the way he is the way he's built, is the way he's made.
Right.
And she's like that because that's the way she was built and she was made. So instead of us trying to change the other, let's accept it and let's know that that's a thing.
And let's reap the benefits of it.
And let's reap the benefits from it. Yes. Yes. And so I'm shocked and surprised that we're now going against that.
Well, yeah, and that book really, it to my way of thinking, it said let's not only recognize the differences and the distinctiveness and the complementariness, but it's a good thing.
Right.
And we should celebrate that and reap the benefits of it.
Right. Well, everybody's trying to change everybody, which to me is just it's totally not working. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll think, am I the only one that is seeing this craziness? I know I'm not. Right. But I'll think, how do they not see what they're doing? That they're wanting to change other people. Like, why would you want to do that? You want to take the person and say, oh, my husband has these gifts and those are going to help benefit our marriage and our family. I have these gifts. They're going to benefit our marriage and our family and the world for that matter.
Yeah, and in order to see that and do that, you've got to get outside of yourself.
Right.
You've got to see beyond just yourself.
Oh my gosh, I think we just hit it on the head. Everybody's looking inward.
Yes.
It's all selfish.
Not only is everybody looking inward, but everybody is their own authority.
Right.
Only they have the right answers. The world should bend to their whims.
Right.
If it doesn't, then you're quickly labeled, put in a box,
Right.
and you're dismissed.
Right.
And it's easy.
Right.
It's easy to do.
Right. Or again, I also wonder about, again, just touching on this, Harrison Butker with his speech about, that his wife felt like she didn't come alive until she became a wife and a mother. Well, I think that's lovely.
Yeah.
And that's her story.
Right.
So why are people bashing him for saying what his wife is experiencing? Yeah. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I didn't work outside the home. I couldn't because of my disability, but I wanted to stay home with those children, and I felt such value in that. And that's not up to somebody else to judge me for wanting to stay home. I don't judge women for going to work either. If they need to go to work, go to work. I think there's an awful lot of judgment going on, and this thing of people wanting to change everybody else. And it's like, well, what's wrong with people? Why can't they just be what they are? Like you were born you weren't born a man, but you were born a male.
Right. God
created you this way, and you're an individual male. So you don't have to match what other men are. You don't have to do that. You can be your own individual man.
Which is what God created me to be.
Right.
Everybody's unique.
Right. And then if you're going to take traits from your father, and like let's see, my ex-husband, the father of my children. So my oldest son is very manly, very masculine. My ex-husband was very manly and masculine. That was his thing. So my son gravitated to that. Right. And now my son has a son. So he is imparting that on that boy, like the manly part of him. And I love that when dads can do that. Mm-hmm. And I love it when moms can give their nurturing to all their children, but like show their daughters femininity and strength.
Right.
I like it when, my son-in-law and my son are teaching their boys to be boys, but to be kind boys. So that's the thing, is like, you can be a good balance, whatever sex you are. Right. And just these labels, these blanket labels are really, that's the part I really struggle with.
Like I said, it's easier. It's easier for me to label you and dismiss you than it is to try and understand where you're coming from. Right. And what you're about.
Right. And also, bad behavior, no matter what sex you are, is bad behavior and shouldn't be tolerated. Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that's the thing, is if we could all come down to that we're humans and that we should be treating each other with dignity and respect, whether we're men or women, and that we all have our good and bad. We all have our things that are our gifts and things that are not so great. And we need to work on those. But to label people and to bash people and to have no tolerance for people, when, I don't understand it.
And I think that's my opinion. That's being fueled to a large degree, by with the advent of social media. Because it's much easier for me to sit in the privacy of my own home, hiding behind a keyboard and bash people than saying the same things face to face. You know what I mean?
Well, and
the anonymity of it,
right,
and the lack of immediate repercussions,
right,
and that's making us a lot coarser,
right,
as a people.
Well, and I think that's where it starts, is this, where you're in your house and then the mob starts on social media, or women will get together and they'll, diss men, and they'll talk down about men. Now, when men used to do that about women, that's not okay either. Right. But now the tables have turned, and now again the women are all getting together a group and making fun of men, mocking men, not thinking they need men. And again, it's just not working, gals. It's not working, ladies. And, we're suffering. We're all suffering. Yeah. Our children are suffering, and our future is suffering.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think one of the things, like we're saying, easier said than done, but is to, in general, I think we all need to start looking outward, not so selfish all the time. Yes, take care of yourself. Yes, be good to yourself.
Right.
God created your body, take care of it, because, it's your one and only body. Right. You have one life and one body, so take care of this gift that he gave you. But, we got to get out of this selfishness that we're in. Man, I mean, it's like quicksand.
Yeah, the selfishness, the isolation, the alienation.
Yes. Yeah. So, and I've talked about I would like to do an episode on dating in this world today, because we got to figure out how to get people matched up and how to get people back in the groove of getting together, courting in a normal way. Right. Everybody's dating on these online dating apps. There's no interaction. Like, you have to have that spark with somebody. You have to. We need to get back to having, the dances, in It's a Wonderful Life. Right. I mean, that dance scene, if you haven't seen that movie, come on now. I know it's not Christmas time, but it's really Christmas at our house all year because Simon is a Hallmark Christmas Channel guy. But anyway, having these normal encounters where people are around each other, like, go to a sporting event, watch the men playing basketball, watch them playing baseball. It's exciting. It's wonderful. Celebrate their masculinity.
Yeah. I mean, human beings engaging between themselves, not through a computer.
Right.
Or a phone.
Right. You can't know if you have a spark by that. No. You can't.
And it's too easy to just keep swiping right.
Right. And the human interaction and getting to know each other. And that's where you're going to figure out, oh, I really like this about him. I like that he, is let's say he's a baseball player, football player, or that he loves sports. I don't know, there's all sorts of stereotypical man things, but he also really likes to cook, and he's also really kind, and he likes to, watch rom-coms with me, and that's fine. That's great. Or this woman, man, she's, she's, just the most nurturing, kind, wonderful woman. I can see that would be a lovely mother, but man, I also really like it that she's strong and that she, can stick up for herself if she needs to, or, that's how you're going to learn that about each other and celebrate these differences and be complimentary. You don't have to agree on everything. You don't have to have everything in common. That's how you learn. Yeah. It's like, oh, he really likes to do these things. I really like to do these things. Let's combine those. Right. Or I don't want to do that with him, so he can go do that with his friends, and I'm going to go over here. That's okay too.
Right. But you've also got to be comfortable enough with yourself to be able to accept that.
I think you hit something there also, is I think sometimes people don't accept themselves. God created all of us. We're very individual. And I know there's things about myself that I don't really like, but they're in my nature, they're in my makeup, they're in my heritage. And, Simon and I definitely are different, where he's very quiet and passive and inward, and I'm very Italian. And I'm louder and I'm more passionate. And even if I'm not mad, I talk in a loud voice and people think I'm mad. And that's hard in a household and family of quiet people. When I'm the only Italian, they don't get me. They never have gotten me. They don't want to get me. They don't like my personality, but it's just, this is me. Right. So, this is how I'm made. Right. And there are things I've worked on and softened and all these things. But for the most part, it's like, I also have things where it's like, thank heaven I'm the way I am. Yeah. Thank heaven the way Simon is the way he is. And we do really balance each other out. Mm-hmm. I don't know that if people are matched in their personality, if they can make it as a couple. Or just even like where, you add like one is the reasonable one, the one that calms things down, and the other one has more excitement than one. You do. And then when you have children, they're a mix. Yeah. And I love that. Yeah. I mean, I love that. That's how my brother and sister and I are with our parents. So I just, I just wish women didn't have this big attitude towards men. And if a man has wronged you in the past, it doesn't mean all men are like that and all men are bad. Yeah. And it doesn't mean masculinity is bad. Right. And not all men look at women. I'm going to say this, but I wouldn't know because I'm not a man. I don't think all men look at women as just objects and they don't value them. I don't believe that. I think there's some men like that.
Well, sure. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think nowadays there's some women that look at men like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's really taken off where women are very aggressive with men. And so, I mean, again, I think it has a snowball effect. And I think if we don't embrace and recognize our good differences and know that we're supposed to be complementary, we're not going to pair off. We're not going to get married. We're not going to have children. And even in this day and age, this has been going on a long time, when fathers are absent of their children's lives, the children's lives are very depleted. They're very, what's another word we can use for that? Because the children really suffer when the dads aren't around. Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's just been historical. Especially boys. Because they need a masculine man. Yeah. They need a role model. It's great when mothers are nurturing. It's great when mothers are nurturing to their children. But they need a dad. They need a dad figure. Mm-hmm. They need a guy who is going to teach them how to be a man. Right. Yeah. But that's the same way where girls need a woman to teach them how to be a woman, and men and boys need a man. Mm-hmm. And that's what's going to help children to thrive and grow and be good grown-ups. Right. And pass that on. Right. Because right now the lines are so blurry, mm-hmm. and there's not a lot of role models for the children, and they're very confused. Yeah. They don't know what to do.
They're confused. They don't know what to do, but they don't know who they are.
They do not know who they are. Again, I love women, don't get me wrong, but I think the women, because they think they can do it all on their own, they think they can nurture and be the role model for both sex children. I don't believe that. I believe they can nurture both children. I think they can be a good role model in many things. But the same way men need the women, the women need the men. Yeah. And
male and female, he created them.
Right, exactly.
Because you need both.
You need both.
And you need the things that each of them can bring to the table.
Right.
Which are different and distinct. But when you combine them, it leads to balance and well-roundedness and a healthy individual.
Right. And one of the things that just popped into my head about the patriarchy is I know a lot of women have a hard time with, there's so many men in that line of work, or there's so many men that do this and so many men that do that. Well, the fact of the matter is, like, people can be mad again about history, but history's history. So men typically back in the day did a lot of the work, and the women stayed home and worked with the children. So you can't be mad if men built all the railroads back in the day. You can't be mad if men invented X, Y, and Z. Right. You can't be mad at that. It's history. Right. Okay. It doesn't mean in the future
that's something you benefit from today.
Exactly. Yeah. So instead of saying, "Oh, it's the patriarchy," okay, it's the patriarchy, and just like there's the matriarchy. Right. Yeah. It's like that would be like if men were saying, "Well, all those women raised those children, darn them." Mm-hmm. That's just silly. Right. That's just stupid. Yeah. That's just us causing problems that don't need to be caused. Yeah. Yeah. So look back and say, "Wow, thank you for creating those things." Now, moving forward, right. If I, as a woman, want to create something, let me try to create it.
Yeah.
you know? Also, I feel like there's certain jobs that men are better suited for. I think there's better jobs women, or certain jobs that women are better suited for. That's okay. We don't have to do everything the same.
No. That's why there's both of us.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just gone so haywire, and I think they're not thinking clearly, and they're all banded together thinking it's all okay. You know how that happens sometimes when people are yes men to you, and they'll just tell you whatever you want to hear because I don't know why. I mean, I've never done that. So, but that happens in the world where people will tell you what you want to hear, and then later you find out, oh man, I was way off.
Right.
But, you know, we live in a very protesting society. Everybody's got to protest something, and everybody's got to be mad about different things, you know, like women don't want men to get involved in their reproductive rights. Well, but excuse me, men are involved in that, actually. Right. So, you know, I mean, and we won't get all into that subject necessarily, except to say, if a woman gets pregnant, she doesn't get pregnant on her own, and that would be half the man's baby as well. So the man should have a choice in what's happening with that woman. And if she didn't want him to have that choice, she should have maybe done something different so that wasn't going to be an issue down the road. So, you know, that is an interesting concept, that they want to do these things on their own, but the man is involved, and he should have a say in some things. So I just think there's a lot of stuff to be worked out, but I think people need to kind of get the anger out of their head. Yeah, take it down a notch.
Yeah, because there's so much anger.
So much anger.
And that fuels so much of this.
Right.
People are so angry.
And I do think that starts when somebody has an isolated incident with a person, and so then they're mad at the whole group. And it just spreads like this. Because I would bet that most of these women don't hate all men. They're saying they do. They're saying they're mad at all men, and men are stupid and they don't need men. But I do think that there are men that they do love and look up to. Sure, yeah. And but again, it's snowballing into this thing, and it doesn't need to be this way. No. And I mean, this is just kind of the temperature in our world. Yeah. But the men, I think, are getting the brunt of it. And even now, it's not just the women going after the men. It's if you're a white male, you're on the chopping block right now. Yeah. That's not fair. There's a lot of unfairness in all this. There's a lot of injustice in a lot of this.
And ultimately, you know, being people of faith, we know who's behind it. It's ultimately Satan.
It is.
You know, because his primary tactic is divide and conquer.
Especially dividing families.
Yes, oh, absolutely.
Yeah, he's trying to take out the family. Yeah. And so I can see it as clear as day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I see it all day, every day, and I think, wow, that's why I'm saying, do you think, like, you and I I'll just speak for both of us, Charles. Okay. All right. You and I are seeing this as plain as day. Yeah. But I'm wondering, are these people so blind to what they're involved in and the frenzy that they're in? I suppose they don't notice what they're doing, or who is doing the puppet strings on them. Yeah. They don't, do they?
Well, especially if you don't think he exists at all.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Which is one of his biggest lies and biggest delights, is to convince people that he doesn't exist.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, St. Augustine had it right. You know, our hearts are restless until they rest in thee.
Right.
And you see the anger, the division, the animosity, the alienation. It comes from a restless heart.
Right.
Because so many hearts are not resting in God.
That is so true. Because that's actually my story. Is I didn't even know I was restless. Yeah. I didn't even know I was like that. And I was even thinking when I was in Mass, I think it was this morning, and I was thinking back when I first became a Christian, and I was really good Christian in the beginning. And then it's when I left the church and had my own religion, which, if you've heard my episode where I talk about leaving the church because I didn't feel at home at the church we were at, and I kind of created my own religion. I was thinking about that this morning and thinking, wow, I just was not in the right mindset. I was drifting away, and I didn't even realize it, that I was drifting away from the Lord. Yeah. And then when I came into the Catholic Church, now I just feel so different. And it's because everything I do, even though I slip and fall and make dumb mistakes and say dumb things and that temper comes out, I quickly try to recover from it. My goal is to be right with God. Right. And everything I do and say, I consider him. Right. Even if I blow it.
You find you can catch yourself
a lot quicker. Yeah. And then so when you say that about it, unless you have God in your life and he's like the center of your life and the thing that is guiding you, your guiding light, your compass, the thing you're focused on outward, not, it's not like you're worrying about yourself all the time. It's the Lord and your service to others. I get what you're saying because I was frantic. I was like, I didn't even know I was frantic. Yeah. I didn't even know I was missing that thing. Right. I didn't even know I needed that bubble wrap around me, the Lord's bubble wrap. I didn't know that. And I'm thinking that these people aren't even aware that if they would know that how it would feel to have him as their compass and their guide and their shield, that's where they would get their safety and security.
Yeah, he's the one that created us. He knows us better than we know ourselves. He knows what we need.
Right.
The question is, do you surrender to that? Do you just surrender to him or not?
Right. And also, can you, accept other people? Yeah. Like, what would make everybody think that they are just the end all be all and they should want to change somebody else and make somebody into something else or bash them if they're not what the person wants them to be? Right. You're too manly. I don't like it. Change your ways. It's like, why should you have the power to do that?
Yeah, but if you think you're your own alpha and omega, you think you are where it begins and ends.
Right.
Then anybody that disagrees with you or doesn't see things the way you do, they're immediately wrong.
Right.
And like I said, they have to either be labeled, dismissed, bashed, or whatever.
Right.
It's just, it goes back to, I keep saying it goes back to the beginning, but it does. The garden, just man's attempt to be his or her own God.
Right.
Yeah. And if I have all the answers and all my answers are right, then by definition, yours are wrong.
Right.
And if you disagree with me, then you're wrong.
Right.
End of story.
Well, and it doesn't seem to me that people, right. It doesn't seem to me that people are very happy these days. No. And, they're mocking people that are in a good marriage like Harrison Butker. They're mocking people that are in a healthy marriage with their family intact and maybe mom or dad stays home with the children. They're doing it that way. And those families are thriving. I'm not saying they're not having problems or there's not things that are coming on the horizon. That would be a stupid statement to make. What I mean is they're certainly not flailing about.
People are walking around. So many people are walking. Not only are they walking around lost, but they're walking around so angry.
Right.
And so vengeful.
About
so
everything.
Unhappy. Yeah.
About everything.
And of course, they immediately lash out.
Right.
Because that's the kind of behavior that internal. And I often think, Lori, just the amount of energy you have to continue to have to stoke those fires has got to be exhausting.
I know I used to do a thing where it was like, if somebody came at me, I'd come back at that. And it was like this back and forth and just would go on and on and on. Lately, since I've become Catholic and more lately, I feel like the less I'm interested in that. And I will try, not always successfully, but I will try to just stop it in its tracks. Right. Like, I just don't want to engage in it. Mm-hmm. I'd rather the other person just, if they want to keep going, they can keep going. I don't want to. Right. I'll just say, okay, yeah. I'm done, But I think this is something I just hope, I don't know if we made any headway here today, except for I feel like hopefully people listening will think in their heads that, hey, all men aren't bad. all women aren't bad. How can I, find the good in this person?
Right.
How can I find their gift? And I don't have to be mad at them. They don't have to like you're saying, like it everybody's just so mad about everything.
It doesn't have to. Yeah.
Everything doesn't have to be a battle.
No.
And we don't have to just be punching each other's lights out to get our way. Right. And it's causing, so much anger and hate in the world. Our children are picking up on this. Yeah. They're becoming angry and hateful and disrespectful. Mm-hmm. They have no regard for anybody anymore at all. Yeah. And that's very troublesome because they're not learning how to manage in the world because they don't have any role models.
That's not sustainable.
Right.
To a good and healthy society and culture.
So before we finish this, is there anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about or that we didn't touch on that you would like to say?
Well, I think, as far as going back to something we mentioned earlier about, with this whole toxic masculinity thing, where men they're unsure of how to be a man anymore. Mm-hmm. And they want to know, well, what does masculine mean? What does it mean to be a man? Who should I look to? What does that look like? Mm-hmm. And for me, again, it begins and ends with God. You look at, Jesus is true God and true man. In fact, there was a Vatican II document, Gaudium et Spes, the Church in the Modern World, where the document had a line that says that Christ fully reveals man to himself, man being male and female. Mm-hmm. So for me, if somebody ever asked me, well, who do I look to as a role model of the well-rounded man? It's Jesus.
It is Jesus.
Because if you look through Scripture and you look at his life, I mean, he was a man of conviction. He was a man of obedience to the Father's will. He was a man of emotion. He wept. At Lazarus' tomb, he wept for Jerusalem in the triumphal entry. He respected women. He saw the inherent dignity in everybody. Oftentimes he's painted as being very wimpy and effeminate. But, he was able to engage in righteous anger, the turning of the money changers in the temple and the driving out of the merchants. So you look at Jesus and he was, in every sense of the word, the well-rounded man. He was true man, not only in that his human nature and his human body wasn't some hologram. It was real flesh, right? Mm-hmm. So he was true man in that regard, but he was also true man in terms of what man, and I'm looking specifically at talking to men here about what a man is and what a man should be. Mm-hmm. And you see the well-roundedness in him.
Yes.
He was able to stand up and say what needed to be said and do what needed to be done. He was very strong, but then he had compassion, he had empathy, he had sympathy. He wasn't afraid to call people out if they were wrong.
Right.
For me, if you want to know what a true man looks like and how to act as a true man, Jesus.
Right. I agree. I agree 100%. And I was thinking that right before you said it, I was thinking he's the perfect role model, because you're right. There's a lot of people that think he was very soft and kind all the time. He was very strong.
Oh,
he was very firm.
Yes.
He did not mess around.
No.
Now, I know most people would say, well, he's God. So, of course, that's too high of a standard to get to. No, you can have that as a goal. You can have that as a role model. Right. There's no reason, nobody's asking you to be God, right. But you're right. He is the epitome. If you have a problem with any men in your life, in your past, and you don't like men because you got molested or you had men do some wrong to you, you can look to Jesus as the perfect male role model. Absolutely. Yeah. And for that matter, the Blessed Mother for the perfect female role model.
Go. Yes.
So the fact we don't need to look to humans, we can look at them and know that we always have them. Mm-hmm. We always have them as a role model. They've never wronged us. They will never wrong us. Right. They will never let us down. They're going to teach us, and their ways have never faltered. No. I think about that a lot every morning when I'm praying the rosary, and I think the part where she accepts the invitation from the Lord to have Jesus, I'm right. thinking, And she was right. Like she did it and it happened. Right. Like a lot of the things that happened, you're going, wow, that actually happened. And to this day, we're still talking about it, you know? Yeah. So yes, I agree that he's the ultimate role model.
Yeah, to all the men out there, yeah, I mean, that's you know, that's what you want to emulate.
Right.
In my view.
Right. And he was a hard worker and all those things. Yeah. So yes, absolutely. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah. Good point. Is there anything else that you didn't get to talk about?
Well, I think, and we touched on it again. I think that, and you and I and people of faith, I think will agree, is that you know, there's someone behind all of this, stoking it, and of course that's the enemy, that's Satan.
Mm-hmm. Right. And as soon as you get those scales off your eyes, you'll see it. Yeah. You'll see that, oh my gosh, I was in the darkness, and now, you know, I'm coming out, and things can get better. Right. Yeah. And things, you don't have to bash other people and pull other people down and dispute everything from everybody else. Again, you're not at peace in your heart. Yeah. You're not at peace with yourself, that you have to lash out to other people. Yeah. And the sooner you can find that peace, the sooner you can find your way through the tunnel. The Lord is there. The Lord is there for all of us. He's just waiting. Mm-hmm. He's just waiting for you. He's there. Yeah. And the sooner you can find your way to him, the better. There's nobody that's ever going to satisfy everything to you. And when I figured that out, to stop, yes, we should count on each other to help each other out. But when I finally realized he's the only one I can count on and the only one that's never going to let me down, and I know that, and I go to him now for everything immediately. If something's happening, I stop, close my eyes, pray, help me, help me, help me. I don't go to a person, I go to him. Right. And he answers my prayers. Maybe not how I want all the time, but I'm still here talking about it. Right. I'm here.
Because he knows you, Lori. He knows you better than you know yourself.
I know, thank heaven.
Anybody knows you.
Thank heaven. And he loves me anyway.
Yes, absolutely. Loves you all the way to the cross. Yeah.
He sure does. So I would say, I was thinking we were going to end on a real low note, but I would say that ended on the highest note possible. Good. That instead of thinking in human terms, if we can all look to the Lord and look to him as a role model in all things, and to, you know, come on, people, start looking for the goodness in things. You know, it's so easy to bash people. It's so easy to, even though, like you said, it's very time consuming.
It's easy, it's cowardly.
It is, and it's time consuming in ways that don't need to be. So look to the Lord, look to the light. Sounds easy. I mean, like, I'm just saying it very flippantly, but it just takes that first step. Yeah. It really does. Yeah. It's not, he's right there waiting. He's not even far away. He's like right there. Yeah. The second you want him.
He's open 24/7, 365, you know.
He is. He'll deliver to your door.
But yeah, I mean, you know, in St. Augustine, you know, our hearts are restless until they rest in thee.
That is so true. I love that.
You know, you've indicated it's true in your life. I know it's true in my life. And the difference is just so phenomenal. And it's just so freeing. Because, you know, the phrase, the truth will set you free. People say, well, what does that really mean? And, you know, when you're no longer a slave to your anger and your bitterness and your resentfulness and your vengefulness, when you're no longer a slave to that, when that's no longer controlling you, that's so freeing.
Right.
You know?
Right. Just, yeah. So see, we're ending on a high note.
Which is
good. It's
good.
very good.
So when you say, is there any hope? There's always hope.
There's always hope. Hope in the Lord.
Hope in the Lord, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the only place, honestly, that there's hope.
Yeah, yeah. At the end of the day.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I think we can all be hopeful if we don't have the Lord in our life and the hope that we're going to make it through. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have him as our compass and our guide, we're in big trouble. Yeah. So let's all be more kind and loving to each other and find your way to the Lord. Yeah, you won't be sorry.
One more thing, if I might, Lori. You know, and again, as people of faith, as Catholics, I think people say, well, what is my role in all this? And certainly a prayer, obviously. certainly evangelizing through words, but also just through the way we live our lives. If people look at us and go, no matter what the circumstances are, they're joyful, they're happy. They always try and see the good in people. I would like to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to have what they have.
Right.
So to live a lifestyle and to have a countenance and a way about you and a vibe about you that's inviting to people. I think that's got to be one of our primary roles going forward.
Right.
Because ultimately, it's God that's going to turn things around. But, he uses us to do that.
Right.
He works in and through us. So, what is our job? Yeah, prayer, yes, about spreading the gospel by words. But what's that like? Again, St. Francis of Assisi, spread the gospel, always even use words if you have to, meaning your life.
Right.
If you're always happy and joyful, not because of circumstances, because they can change, but joy amidst the circumstances.
Right.
And that's a belief that only God can give you that.
Right. And also peace. He's the only one that can give you peace.
Can see that light, that joy, that happiness, that peacefulness emanating out of you. I got to believe that's going to be attractive to people.
Right. Right. And it's all him coming through. It's he's drawing people hopefully through us, if we have him within ourselves.
Right.
That's the thing is, he's the magnet.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, I appreciate you coming today.
Well, a little bit of a tiger by the tail, Tom. Hopefully I did well. We did well.
No, I think it was good. So I do thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Okay, thank you. Love you. Bye. Thank you for joining me today. Now go out and be a bright light in someone's life. And remember, be focused, be faithful, and be fresh. Fresh Catholic is produced, edited, and recorded in Ventura, California.